Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. We're just going to take a few moments to let everyone in here. Thank you so much for joining us. We got a lot of people tonight. This is exciting. Just let everybody roll in for like a minute and then we will get going. Great. And as you're coming in, I see a lot of people with their cameras on. That's wonderful. We love seeing your faces tonight if that is possible. So thank you for doing that. It helps us feel a little more connected in the digital world. Great. Okay, slow down for a second. So I think let's get the ball rolling because we got a lot to dive into tonight. Thank you for joining us. My name is Alicia. I'm the Adult Services Manager here at NCW Libraries. We are so thrilled to have Mónica Guzman here, the author of I Never Thought of It That Way. Here's the little cover. As a part of our ongoing NCW Reads program. NCW Reads, with the NCW Reads program, we hope to connect people across our 5 counties and 30 library locations that we serve by inviting everyone to engage with a book that sparks conversation, curiosity, and learning. And this feels like the most perfect book for that. We believe stories have the power to expand our perspective of the world, bridging our differences by highlighting how much of the human experience we all share. So by joining us tonight, you're helping us fulfill our mission here to connect the people of NCW to vital resources and opportunities that foster individual growth and strengthen communities. So thank you for being here. Just a quick little housekeeping before we get started. We encourage everyone to have their cameras on. We love seeing your faces, but to stay muted. This is a big group tonight, which is fantastic, and that just helps us stay with a decreased background noises. We are going to have a Q&A session with Mónica, so at any time you can submit a question in the chat, and I'll be collecting those. This evening's program is brought to you in part by 2 very amazing partners. We're so grateful to the Wenatchee Valley Dispute Resolution Center and NCW Equity Alliance. And to highlight the important work they are doing here locally, we've asked them just to share a little bit about the work you're doing. So if you're not familiar with them, you can be. So first, I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer Talbot. She is the Executive Director at the Wenatchee Valley Dispute Resolution Center. So over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Alicia. My name is Jennifer Talbot, and the Wenatchee Valley Dispute Resolution Center, we are a nonprofit organization serving Chelan and Douglas counties. Our mission is changing relationships through peaceful conflict resolution. So we have a team of volunteer mediators, and we provide cost-effective mediation services, conflict resolution training, and community education. I'd like to just really briefly share some recent community education that we've provided. And I will share my screen. We were so excited to be able to partner with NCW Equity Alliance and the NCW Libraries to bring a Curious Conversation series. And we were able to incorporate a lot of Ms. Guzman's work into our series because it really aligns well with listening skills and communication skills and learning how we can have curious conversations with our community members. So thank you for this opportunity, and I would like to now pass it over to Oscar to talk about the NCW Equity Alliance.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Oscar Licon, and I'm the Executive Director for the NCW Equity Alliance. We're also a nonprofit serving Chelan, Douglas, Grant, and Okanagan counties, and we are here to support diversity and inclusion initiatives across the region. And we're super excited to have this program and Curious Conversations. We have a lot of learning series too throughout the year, so keep an eye on our website. We have our signature program, Learning to People Better Together, coming up in January. So if you would like more information, I think there's some links that will be provided for our website. So thank you all for being here with us this evening, and I'll pass it on to Alicia.
Thank you, Oscar. Yes, I will be, after all these wonderful intros, I'll be sharing all the links in the chat. So thank you to these partners. They're doing incredible work. And now I'm going to pass it over to Light Estrada Gonzalez. They are going to be facilitating our conversation tonight with Monica. Light Estrada Gonzalez has lived in Wenatchee for 20 years. Light has a passion for community building, communication, and politics. Light enjoys spending time with her dogs, spending time outside, working out, and reading manga. So over to you, Light. Yay.
Hi, everyone. It's so amazing to see you all here and see so many faces. It means a lot to us that you're choosing to spend your evening with us and really wanting to have these conversations with our neighbors. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk to Monica. Let me introduce Monica. I know we could get right into it, but now it's my pleasure to introduce Monica. Monica Guzman is a bridge builder, journalist, and author who lives for great conversations sparked by curious questions. She's a senior fellow for public practice at Braver Angels, the nation's largest cross-partisan grassroots organization working to depolarize America, founder and CEO of Reclaim Curiosity, an organization working to build a more curious world, co-founder of the award-winning Seattle newsletter The Ever Gray, and advisor for Starts With Us and the Generations Over Dinner Project. She was a 2019 fellow at the Harry M. Jackson Foundation, where she studied social and political division, and a 2016 fellow at the NIEM, hopefully said that right, Foundation for Journalism at Harvard University, where she researched how journalists can rethink their roles to better meet the needs of the I'm struggling with that word. Public.
It's a mouthful. I have a hard time with it. Participatory or something.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks for the rescue, Monica. We are so thrilled to be in conversation with her this evening. Please join me in welcoming Monica. Yay. Virtual claps. Yay. Awesome. All right, Monica, if you don't mind, let's dive right in.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm really happy to join you all this evening, and thank you all for showing up tonight. I always remind myself when I do these events, especially virtually, to have a moment of sonder. And if you've not heard the word sonder, let me introduce you to a fabulous new word that is actually in our dictionary as of a few years ago. Sonder is the realization that bystanders in your life and total strangers have lives that are as rich and complex as your own, with pain and joy and struggle. So even those of you who are not on camera, I was just floating through the screens, looking at your names and imagining the full people, human beings behind those names. So I invite everyone to just have a moment of sonder with me as we just like sit together in this room with lots of little digital boxes, but know that there are real human hearts and minds here joining us this evening. So I was asked by this fabulous organization to do something I haven't done yet, which is to present some of the fundamental ideas behind the book through a tour of the visuals in the book. So I'm really proud that in the book we have a wonderful illustrator named Haley Weaver, who's a friend of mine, who just gave her talent and artfulness to illustrating the concepts. So let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen and walk you through some of these. So hang on, make sure I get that right. Can I see some nods if we can see that?
Yeah,
excellent.
We can see it, Monica. And thank you so much for that moment of just allowing us to sit with each other in this virtual space. Before we dig into your images, though, can we backtrack a little and maybe have you tell us about why did you write this book? Why right now?
Yes. I guess I'll stop my sharing and then just restart in a second. Okay, so the origin story here, there's two main threads. One is professional and the other personal. I've been a journalist my whole career. It's a craft that I've cared deeply about. When I was very young, I was pretty shy. Talking to strangers was terrifying to me. And yet somehow my fascination for people and my love of writing and communication led me to my first journalism internship in a local newspaper in New Hampshire. And I remember being terrified of picking up the phone and making that call and talking to a person I don't know and asking them personal questions about something. And just that, my heart would pound. But after a while of doing this, every time I had a story and I made the mistake of thinking, I just got to talk to this person, they're just going to give me a quote and I'm going to move on, I'm just going to plug it into my story. Every time they surprised me, every time people revealed their sort of complexity and richness, and I got to understand that the story was always more interesting if I really opened up and listened to someone. That happened so many times that eventually that fascination with people and that kind of addiction to what their stories could be went up against my shyness and won. So I care deeply about helping people understand each other. That's the thing that drove me through journalism many, many years of this career. But 5, 10, who knows how many years ago, I started to realize that if what I want to do is help people understand each other, I can't just do it through journalism anymore. And that's because it almost feels like our communications landscape is like shattered glass. If you tell stories into one set of pieces of the glass, you're not going to reach the other pieces of the glass because everybody's untrustful and for interesting reasons. So I decided I need to pull back a little bit from that and see if I can work on that fundamental brokenness. So then the second thread is more personal, and that
Monica,
is
before you start your second thread, I apologize for interrupting you. There's like some feedback going on in your mic, and it's making it hard for some folks to hear. Yeah, it kind of sounds like you're rubbing like fabric against it. That's kind of what it sounds like.
I am so sorry. What I'm going to try is just changing my microphone. Let's see if that works.
Can everyone still hear me?
Yes. Oh, it's
That's
much better. Yeah.
All right. I'm so sorry, y'all. Thank you, Light, for interrupting and letting me know. I would have hated to go on like that. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. So I'll keep going for now. So the personal thread is my politically divided family. I am a Mexican immigrant. My parents are Mexican immigrants. And in the year 2000, they got their naturalization test and passed it and became US citizens. And I was 17 and I was naturalized automatically as well. And I remember coming home, and I'm like this young whippersnapper, like, liberal minded and very like leaning Democrat for sure. And just assuming that everyone in my life leans the same way. And I came home and saw a Bush Cheney sign over my mother's desk and was like, they're Republicans. And so thus began some drama that didn't get that intense until the 2016 presidential election. And then it got really intense. Meanwhile, of course, all across the country, families and communities were really tested by political divisions and expectations we have of each other and the assumptions and projections we make about people who disagree with us. And yet, somehow, within my own family, we had really tough, really heated, hard conversations, but I was able to get to the point, and I wrote this line in my book, where I realized that if I were my parents, I would have voted for Trump too, which for me was a big thing. It was a big deal because of how I felt about that particular candidate. So I'm looking around the country and realizing this is so important to do and yet so hard, and there's not very many people talking about it. So let me see what I can do here. And then I just kind of got obsessed with the work that ended up resulting in this book.
Thank you, Monica, for sharing those two threads that led you to this book. I know in the reading and the hearing of the book, you talk about your family a lot and the very important connection that they have. And I think a lot of us here are in this space because we can also share stories about not being able to connect with our families or being scared of bringing stuff up with our families or and don't know how to do it. So thank you for that. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about your cover art. I know if we could flash the cover art again. Oh, look at that. We got it. It's such a cool cover art. It's just a bunch of eyes, beautifully drawn eyes. So I was wondering, can you tell me more about it? Why that?
I love the cover art so very much. And I feel like I have to look at it while I answer this question. Yes. So, what you see is this sort of, it's eyes, but it also almost looks like jewels. And they're all different in sort of a variety of ways. There's the color, there's the shape, they're whether they're open or closed or look joyful or suspicious. And what it said to me was, it's the range of perspectives. It's representing the range of perspectives, but it's also talking about one of the main kind of lenses of the book, to continue with the eye analogy, is that we're so divided, we're blinded, that a lot of what is holding us back from trust and understanding is this way in which we're misperceiving people, but believing that we are perceiving them really accurately and really well. And so our eyes are really quite closed to the reality of other people. I say in the book, and I say a lot, that whoever is underrepresented in your life will be overrepresented in your imagination. And that's the reality of a divided world, where, it's so much is the voices you happen to be surrounded by and the perspectives that you happen to really feel yourself drawn to. And so those perspectives that would challenge your own or that would add friction to your own are more difficult for you to encounter. And over time, you may just stop seeing them, right? And by extension, perhaps seeing the complexity and the whole humanness of people who hold those perspectives. So yeah, so a lot of this is really about how do we open our eyes wider in a world that seems to want them to stay closed.
Thank you. What an awesome explanation of your cover art. I am ready for you to show us some of those images, those beautifully drawn images in your book. Why don't we start with SOS? Tell
Okay,
me
yes,
about it.
thank
Show me
you.
it. Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, and then just like pull me back in after I I don't want to get too far ahead. So yes,
Yeah,
let's just
yeah.
do SOS. Great.
Yeah.
Hang on. So we'll go back to the sharing here.
Yes. For all the
Okay.
folks that have read the book, these are some of the, and folks that haven't, these are some of the images that you will find throughout the book that Monica uses to explain.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I talk about how we got here to this place where we're so divided, we're blinded. And the framework that I use is the SOS: sorting, othering, and siloing. 3 forces of human nature that are really natural and age old. They're just part of what it means to be human. But they've come together in a bit of a perfect storm to help us get to where we are. The first one is sorting. So sorting is the perfectly natural human tendency to want to be around people who are like us. It's, called the birds of a feather phenomenon. It's also called homophily, but it's love of sameness. We find comfort when we're around people who we relate to. I mean, this is obvious. This is how we form friendships. It's also the easiest way to form community when there isn't that much diversity. Makes sense? So this is what we do. We look around and we go, who's like us? Who do we feel comfortable and around? So that's what happens. Now, what we've seen politically, right, demographically, is blue zip codes are getting bluer in the United States politically. Red zip codes are getting redder. So we're seeing these trends where it is more difficult to encounter communities and neighborhoods that are truly mixed ideologically than it maybe ever has been. It's very, very interesting what's happening. So what does that mean? That means that, as I was mentioning before, it can be really difficult to encounter a challenge or friction to what you might believe. And sort of like the fish, that joke about a fish, an old fish comes up to a couple of young fish and says, how's the water? And the young fish just look at him. The old fish swims away. And then one of the young fish looks at the other young fish and goes, what's water? It's like what you swim in, the perspectives you swim in come to feel so natural that you don't even really think about them anymore. They're just what's right. They're just what is and ought to be. And it gets difficult to understand that there might be other perspectives. So that's sorting. Should I move to the next one?
Yes, please move on.
All right, great.
To the
okay, so the next step is othering. So othering is the very natural human tendency to want to put distance between us and them. Some pretty chilling research going back to the middle part of last century shows that the differences don't really have to be meaningful for us to subtly discriminate against some kind of them. Even if it's like, your school, your kids are in school and there's 2 homerooms and that's the kid from the other homeroom. Do you know what I mean? Like any difference, we start to subtly discriminate. Now, when the difference is meaningful, then watch out, right? When we have narratives about those people hate us, or those people, dismiss us or are against us, then othering can become pretty dangerous. This is where, frankly, a lot of the greatest sins against humanity kind of start. But again, there is something natural and it can be quite good, like sports teams, you like rooting for your side against the other side. There's something bonding and beautiful about that. But there's a really profound question, like, can there be an us without a them? Is a really profound question. And I'll move on to the last one, Light,
Yes,
that's
please
okay,
do. Of
on this
course.
one. So the final step of this triumvirate is siloing. So these are the stories we tell, kind of as a result of sorting and othering, the stories we tell about those people over there, the judgments that start to, first they're just little buds, and then unchallenged, they just grow and grow and grow, and they begin to take on this life of their own, where the people in the people who disagree with us over time, as we keep, telling stories about them under layers of judgment that don't get checked very, very often, as we separate ourselves from them so that we don't have the experience of seeing them as just like us or human like us or whatever, right? We start to vilify. And we start to push away, and we really kind of pin a lot of our problems on them. And, we see this happening a lot with, our phones. Siloing happens a lot right here, where we've custom built these worlds where we get the stories that we prefer, and we don't hear the ones we don't. And when we do hear the ones that we don't prefer, we don't hear them generously. And so we build this world that has so many different kinds of silos in it. So I'll stop there, Light, for now.
Thank you. Thank you so much for explaining SOS.
Mhm.
I appreciate the information. I'll move right along to your image about the 4 steps to curiosity. Would you mind telling me a little bit about the image and explaining what I never thought of it that way moments are? And I know you have a shorthand for it as well.
Yes, I never thought of it that way moments, shorthanded intuit moments. We just drop the W at the end of the acronym anyway. It's fine. Those are when we think or say to ourselves, I never thought of it that way. And I see those moments as the reward of curiosity, the kind of curiosity that braves some kind of divide, that welcomes some friction to see what's there, to see what can be revealed. So I never thought of it that way moments are the result of curiosity. A lot of times, we're sailing, we're in our harbor, we're out, we're exploring, and we hear word of that awful thing way over there. And it's really bad, and we see it, and we can see it at a distance, and it's a threat. Maybe we're gonna go and shoot cannons at it. Maybe we're gonna run away the other direction, fight or flight. But when we're curious, we take a look. We take a closer look at the thing that might seem scary or unfamiliar or even threatening. So, and we might see that it's maybe not that threatening at all, but it takes curiosity. It takes a kind of courage. So the 4 steps here are finding the gap, gathering new knowledge, embracing complexity, and rejecting easy answers. So finding the gap, the neuroscience of curiosity tells us that curiosity is sparked at the gap between what you know and what you want to know. So a really simple, silly example is if you're kind of sitting around with friends and somebody goes, that guy in that movie, and starts to try to tell you, like, the one with the thing, and you're like, oh, I don't know. And then finally someone has to pull out their phone and look up the movie because there's like this itch and you just got to figure it out. So that's that gap pulling you to fill it with knowledge that you need. So gathering new knowledge, when you do that, when you just learn something new, then there's all this opportunity to find new gaps, right? Like Oh, wait a minute, what did they mean by that? Or they said that they went to Colorado. Where in Colorado? Or all these little questions you can ask, all these gaps that you can fill as you gather new knowledge. But if you just keep gathering the same knowledge you've always had, you're less likely to encounter gaps. Embracing complexity. This one's really important. A lot of times we feel confusion, and confusion is so unpleasant, right? And we'll get there when something that we don't know is just so confounding and somewhat painful to us. We're confused. Why would they do that? Why would they think this way? And if we recast confusion as complexity, this is complicated. Let me start to ask my questions, right? I don't have to get all the way to the end, but let me begin. And then finally, rejecting easy answers. One of the things a lot of research has been done around is that when we are anxious, we tend to want to manufacture certainty. Uncertainty becomes untenable. It's so hard to stay in a state of uncertainty. And so, gosh, you don't know why somebody voted the way they voted. And here you are reading a wonderful thought piece on the internet that looks really confident, has a bunch of statistics. Hey, now I'm sure. All those people voted that way because of what I read in this article, right? I don't need to go talk to them anymore. I have all the answers already. Those are easy answers. You can't understand a whole lot of individuals based on what you read in one article or what have you. People are bottomless mysteries. So that's the 4 steps to curiosity.
Thank you. And I noticed that your little circle person or being in the boat is holding this telescope. And so let's take us there. Let's take us to that telescope. Can you tell me or tell all of us what the Curiosity telescope means?
Right. So this is the sort of never-ending zoom, the never-ending periscope, the sort of the follow-up question thing where, you gather knowledge and then you find gaps in your understanding. And so then you follow up with more questions and you get the responses to that question, and that gives you more knowledge, and then you find more gaps, and then you ask more questions, and then you get more knowledge and you find more gaps. And this is the path toward understanding, right? Maybe some of you have had the experience of going down rabbit holes trying to learn something where every answer just inspires more questions, and there you go. That once happened to me. Funny story. Years ago, I was in Hawaii on vacation, and there's this restaurant called Fleetwood's, and it turns out it was started by Mick Fleetwood of Fleetwood Mac. And one thing led to another, and I was up till 3 a.m. devouring everything the internet could tell me about the sex, drugs, rock and roll of Fleetwood Mac. It was so fascinating. I had no idea. Like you can just kind of go. So yeah, so that's the telescope. It's just gather knowledge, fill the gap, gather knowledge, identify the gap, fill it, go, go, go.
Thank you. I have also found myself in a deep rabbit hole at like 2 or 3 a.m. It's always a fun time to do research. Well, now that we've found out how to be curious, we know that we need to fill the gap and have those conversations. Let's talk about the conversation dial. Would you share a little bit about that image?
Yeah, so a lot of times people end up broaching really difficult conversations across a big divide in a context that is not amenable to making that a productive conversation. So the conversation dial is a tool for checking the conditions. It's like, is the water warm? Checking the conditions around the conversation to give yourself a little more of a sense of, is this the right moment? Is this the right moment to bring something up? Or even if, you're suddenly thrust into a thread on Facebook that has gotten nasty, what can you do to change the conditions? So let's go through these. This is time, embodiment, attention, parity, and containment. So time, if you're out the door, someone's out the door, you're rushed, you've got a lot on your mind, and you just don't have a lot of time, it's not a good time to bring up abortion. Maybe not today, maybe not right now. Embodiment, that's how much of your full toolbox of human communication can you deploy in this moment? Right now, you can see my face, my gestures, you see my smile every now and then, cutting the severity and gravity of what we're really talking about with a little laughter, right? Like these things are actually really important. They're the glue that keep us together. You can see in my gestures, some momentum and some energy and all of that, where if it were just text, one thing to remember is with text, people read what you text them in their voice, not yours, right? So if the person you're communicating with is like worried about you or has like suspicions about what's going on, if they project something onto you, they're going to read what you meant to say in a perfectly good tone and a really bad one. So this is just one example of see how much of the full toolbox of human communication you can bring to a conversation. Attention. I always talk about this one because even here on Zoom, right? If I opened up another tab because I get bored with you all and I just want to look things up online, and that web page has a lot of white on it, you'll see my face suddenly get bright and you'll be like, she's not paying attention. We can see this with our colleagues at work all the time, can't we? People who wear glasses don't know. They're giving themselves away. We can see that you're navigating other things. So attention, are you actually with me here? Are you present with me? It's really hard to connect and be candid on difficult conversations when you're not. Parity, the way I mean parity is sort of equal platform, equal level of engagement. So this is another problem online. If I'm the poster on Instagram and you're the commenter, I can block you, but you can't block me with the same kind of, impact. So as much as possible, can we meet on equal terms? Now there's a whole thing about background power dynamics that I don't mean by this. That's different, that might be in society. Containment, I think, is by far the most important one of these. Containment is, to what degree is this conversation contained to the people actually engaging in it? So again, on social media, a lot of times you have this invisible mass audience. You don't know how many of them there are. You cannot witness their listening. You can't, how like, as I'm talking to you all, I'm seeing some of your faces. And if I saw a face that went, I would like wonder about what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean? But we can't do that online. We can't witness listening. And so what do? We're very, very careful. We wonder, oh no, everyone's judging me. It's a panopticon. So we perform our perspectives instead of explore our perspectives. Not a great context for candor and real exploration and humility, right? So that's the conversation dial. Wherever, like check yourself. And if you're in a conversation where containment is really low because you're on a public Facebook thread, you can turn up the dial, So tell the person you're disagreeing with, can we take this to a private message thread? You've already turned up the dial. Or you can say, can we pick up the phone? You're turning up the dial. Can we meet for coffee? Woo, dial all the way up.
Thank you for that explanation. And I'm reflecting about these conversations and why we want to have these conversations. At the heart of it in your book, it was about finding out people's experiences, right? Yeah. And why and how their experiences led them to where they're at. Yeah. And I think a part of that is taking away assumptions. So can you explain a little bit about the assumption spiral?
Yeah. So assumptions are the minions of certainty. Assumptions are answers to questions we never asked. We just made them up. We just have the answers and choose to believe them when we never asked the question. Assumptions are very dangerous across divides. They're very dangerous all the time. It's where a lot of inherent bias comes from. It's where we can be caught off guard. It's where we can really miss each other. So the thing is, we can't control the assumptions we make. We're going to make assumptions. It's going to happen. It's just our brain needs shortcuts and it will take them. We're not like robots who walk around and if we don't have data, we have a blank spot. Oh no, our brain fills in the blank spots with crap, And so what we have to do is notice what we're assuming so that we have the opportunity to question them and to perhaps turn our assumptions into a question. So there are a couple of really pernicious assumptions that happen to come up a lot across not just the political divide, but any big divide. So the assumption spiral is an example of one of these. And the way I would sum up the assumption here, the pernicious assumption, is if you oppose what I support, you must hate what I love. Right? So the step-by-step of this in the way that I've seen it in a particular story in the book is, my vote against the candidate I despise is a vote for things that feel absolutely good and important to me. So a vote for the candidate I despise must be a vote against these good and important things. Anyone who votes for the candidate I despise, therefore, must be against good and important things. Therefore, anyone who votes for this candidate must be a bad person. So one of the many problems with the assumption spiral is it follows a cognitive fallacy, sometimes called what you see is all there is. The idea that the variables that went into my decision are all the variables there are. And so I'm doing the math. And if you came out with a different conclusion, oh my gosh, you must hate what I love. How could you? What kind of person are you? And so this assumption ends up justifying a lot of the vilification that we send and the judgments that we can make recklessly of people that we don't really know when we haven't really asked them, what are your variables?
Thank you for that explanation, Monica. Let's end the explanation of our images with your how instead of why image. We see two folks or two circle people. That's what I'm calling them, circle
Yes.
people, walking together. What is that conveying to us?
So one of the fun ways I heard a colleague at Braver Angels put this recently, I thought it was nice, is that in some of the best conversations across disagreement, you're not having an argument, you're taking a walk. You're not having an argument, you're taking a walk. So what do I mean by that? Our opinions, we don't just like take them on and off like clothes we want to wear on a certain morning. They are the result of our experiences, our values. They have deep roots. If I could visualize the deeply held beliefs that you all have, they have roots. You know, we can't just drop them like a potato. Like that's not how it works. And so what comes from that is sort of the following principle, that if you want to understand where somebody is in their perspective, you can ask where they're coming from. Where did they come from? What is the path they walked to their views? You can ask this of yourself too. How did I get to my views? No, really, how did I get to my views? What personal experiences impacted me? What sorts of concerns about this issue, about the world, about goodness, whatever it is, what concerns animate my belief about something, political or otherwise, but in this context, political. Yeah, and what values? So the key tip here, the really smart strategy that I cannot endorse enough, is a lot of times in a conversation of disagreement, we're tempted to ask why. Why do you believe what you believe? That's my path to understanding, is why do you believe what you believe? But what that does when there's a lot of suspicion or mistrust is it can make people feel like they're being put on trial. Now I have to justify myself. Oh my gosh, so what do people do? Okay, why do I believe what I believe? Oh God, I've got to convince this person that I'm smart or whatever. So what am I going to do? I'm going to think about the talking points out there that I've seen other people take shelter under, and I'm going to give those talking points to this person. And I'm like, okay, here's a reason, there's a reason, there's a reason. And then what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to give them my reasons. Oh yeah, well, here's my reason and my reason and my reason. And then what's going to happen? Well, the other person is going to give me their reasons again, but louder. And then we're stuck in this cycle. But if instead of asking, why do you believe what you believe, you ask, how did you come to believe what you believe? What you do is you invite someone to tell you the story, the path they walk to their views. There's a lot of good things about this. And one of the key ones is everyone is the world's reigning expert on their own perspective and their own story, I should say. Everyone's the reigning expert on their own story. There's no fake news here, right? So, and you get to relate, and to give a nice little rhyming point to it, relate before you debate. Because if you don't start to see pieces of yourself in the other, right? When people tell their own story, they tell stories of struggle and pain and relief and release and joy. And we go, okay, yeah, like I totally disagree with this person, but I can see why they made that decision in that moment. Like it adds up to me. I don't like it, but there it is, right? And so we take a walk with each other. So instead of putting each other on trial, we give each other a tour of the path we walk to our views, not to get to agreement. That's not the goal of what we're talking about, but to get to, again, the eyes opening wide, right? to get to the kind of understanding that like I've been able to reach with my parents and they've been able to reach with me. They don't like my vote either, you know, but we understand how we got there because we've asked all kinds of questions about that, the path we walk to our views.
Thank you, Monica. It is so beautiful to be able to create those connections and have those conversations with folks. But admittedly, even as you admit, those aren't easy skills nor easy conversations. We are going to transition into our Q&A. You, as it was put in the chat, you can DM DM the question directly, or you can also unmute, or sorry, not unmute. That might cause chaos. You can raise your hand and then I'll call on you. But we do have a question that's been submitted. So I'll go ahead and read that question. While reading the book, I keep coming back to, this is great, and you provide a lot of great tools and suggestions on how to try to bridge a divide. But what about people who are pushing major conspiracies? And then examples were given, such as 2020 election being stolen, the FBI, all Democrats and all public health officials are liars, etc., and hate and division on our community who continue to demand a seat at the table, even though they are not really based, and even though their publicity started position in an op-ed column is highly divisive, the community at large. There seems to be no way to try to bridge that divide. It seems to be more of a divide.
Yeah, happy to thank you for this question. This is one of the big questions. So thank you for asking it. It's on everyone's mind. Where I guess I'll begin on this is I have a friend, Buster Benson, who wrote a wonderful book called Why Are We Yelling? And from him, I learned a framework for something that I think really informs this question. So he talks about how there are multiple types of conversations across disagreement. The conversation about what is true, the conversation about what is meaningful, and the conversation about what is useful. A lot of times across political disagreement, we really get stuck on the conversation about what's true because it feels like the only conversation we can have, right? And it really becomes a flashpoint when, as I have, you encounter someone who, as far as you know, believes something completely false. And so it seems like you have two options. One is to convince them that they're wrong, and the other is to just abort. We're done. There's nothing more we can do here. So what I would submit and what I would offer is that the conversation about what is true is not the only conversation we can be having. And in fact, when we get to those places where we hit a wall on facts, where we hit a wall on what's true, the conversation we must have is the conversation about what is meaningful. So what do I mean by that? The conversation about what is meaningful is about people's hopes, people's fears, people's concerns. A couple of advantages to this. When you ask people what they worry about, what you learn is what they care about. And when people feel heard about what they care about, they are more willing to hear you back. A lot of misinformation and disinformation thrives and spreads, not because people hate truth, but because there's something about that misinformation and disinformation that seems to acknowledge deep concerns or fears. And a lot of the information that we have that is more like mainstream and responsible and trustworthy or whatever doesn't even acknowledge those concerns and fears that a lot of people carry. That's the way it feels for people. So what does that mean? What that means is, in that, go back to that conversation dial, in the context of a highly contained conversation, right? When it's just one-on-one, you don't have to worry about, okay, this person is spouting lies and it's going to infect the whole world. No, it's just you. It's just you. So how about you have the conversation about what's meaningful? You know, tell me what worries you right now about elections in the United States. What are you afraid might happen, you know, if we go down this road in the future? Tell me how you see it. How do you see this? And spend some time in that. And persuasion science, which is fascinating if any of you want to geek out. really shows, to quote a wonderful author, David McRaney, all persuasion is self-persuasion. So go back to that conversation about what is true. If you chose to try to convince that person they're wrong, you think that's going to work? If you want to try to shame them, right? You think that's going to work? It's not. It's not. Let's say that you absolutely are right and they absolutely are wrong. That's not the way to go about it. It's relationship. It's being heard. It's the conversation about what is meaningful. The last point I'll make is the conversation about what is meaningful is the only type of conversation that builds trust. Without trust, we cannot access truth. We can't do it. We keep trying and it's backfiring. So let's stop doing it that way. And hear each other out when we can in contained conversations with people with whom we have some relationship.
Thank you, Monica. I think all of us love being or feeling like we've been heard, right? Even when it is folks that are spreading conspiracy theories, whoever it is, right?
Yeah.
Everybody deserves to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I see some comments in the chat, just like truth is ever evolving, and that
Mm-hmm.
the theory of meeting needs from Rosenberg's nonviolent communication. Yeah, I think there might be
Exactly.
some ties there, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I will also say, as a member of the media who cares deeply about journalism, I think a lot of times what we've been doing, severing a lot of connections with folks, believing some people because they don't believe truth or whatever are just somehow not worthy of being heard. And then what do we think happens? That they let go of their beliefs? No. They go and find other people who will hear them, the people who agree with them. And then what do we know happens from opinion science? When you're surrounded by people who agree with you, your opinions intensify. And the actions you want to take on behalf of your opinions intensify. So every time we sever a connection, right, with someone who disagrees with us, we're keeping a kind of friction that could be a check on perhaps something that is just plain wrong. But we sever that relationship, then they're not going to let go of those beliefs. They're going to go and find people who will hear them and receive them well, right?
Right.
But when we show contempt for each other, that's a kind of abandonment.
Thank you, Monica. And then I just saw somebody say they lost sound. Did anybody else lose? Can everybody hear me? Okay, everybody can hear me. Okay. It might G, it might be on your end. Hopefully that gets figured out. Well, we're still in the Q&A section. Does anybody have, oh yes, go ahead. Please unmute.
Is that me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Hey, Monica, thank you so much for what you're doing. I caught your podcast, your most recent podcast, and yes. And I'm a member of Braver Angels, and I'm also in a left men's movement space, and my brain's getting scrambled, between Braver Angels and part of it is that I don't really. It's like I have this real fear of if I am just nice, then I'm actually I don't it's I don't do I have a question? It's like I'm feeling just confused and sad at the moment. It's like
tell me more about that. Like where does that feeling come from right now? When
where
you
does it come from?
when you think about the broader situation, and is that what you mean?
Yeah. Well, it's like I got a toe in Braver Angels, and it's like but I'm not convinced that just being nice is going to be enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess and I'm feeling scared right now, so it's like I'm not sure.
I can speak to that. It's okay that you don't have a question.
Thanks.
Yeah. You're right. Being nice is not enough. And being nice is not the solution. What curiosity across divides demands most of all is honesty and candor and the ability to say and the ability to build a kind of space where people can both hear and be heard. Not so they can be nice to each other or be polite, which really means we hold pieces of ourselves back for the sake of like harmony. That's not what this moment requires. What this moment requires is the ability to speak fully, freely, and without fear, to quote the Braver Angels way, with each other. And it takes skill to get to that point. It can take skill depending on, the folks who are coming together, how they feel about a certain issue, the emotional volatility of it, etc. But that is what is required. Because right now, as you all know, there's a very high number of people who say they're afraid to talk about their real political beliefs. Whether it's college or just in college campuses or anywhere, they're afraid to do that. And so if we're not honest together, are we really together? If we're holding back, if we're pretending, if we're papering over our real perspectives. So what does it mean? What does it mean to build a context where we can hear and be heard? What does it mean for me to be able to tell you what I really believe, but in a way that you can hear me? If I say, no, you idiot, it's this, you can't hear that, right? But if I say, thank you for telling me about your perspective. What I heard you say was that you believe this because of this and this. Is that right? Yes. I look at it differently. Can I tell you what I mean? Sure, go ahead. Aha! I have now cleared some space for myself. And at Braver Angels, we call that the pivot. You pivot from having listened to and confirmed a sort of understanding of the other person, and then you go, can I have your buy-in to tell you how I see it differently? Not why you're an idiot, not I disagree even, it's I see it differently. Going back to the eyes. That's what we need. We need the perspectives of America to come together and to see each other and to be in the table. That's how we really see ourselves. That's how we build a world that sees itself, not by being nice. There's a difference.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. And also I do have some experience with my mother-in-law, who is a Trump supporter, let's say. So and I have, through depolarizing myself, she's changing because I am.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Funny
That's
how that works.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
Thanks.
mom is actually here. She's upstairs right now, and we have had so many incredible conversations. And we've gone to
Thank
Braver
you.
Angels events as a family, and that fear is very real. Thank you for voicing it. I think a lot of us feel it. And that fear can push us to be incurious. How can you wonder about something you think is out to get you? Part of what we're battling is our fear.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Brian, hopefully I said, yeah, Brian, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that you're scared and that you feel, right, that we have so many feelings around this, because these are our neighbors, these are our community, these are the people that we see when we go to the store. So yeah, it is really brings up a lot to think of them as scary. I'll move on to another question. Well, a person that said that they would come off mute to ask their question. So Sarah Myers, if you don't mind coming off mute and voicing that question.
Hello. Can you guys hear me okay? Thank you. I feel like I'm nerding out with this whole conversation because I have been involved in Monica's book since the spring when she was hosted by Inovia up in Spokane. And I've been like trying to share it with other groups that I'm a part of, and I haven't been able to get anyone on the excited about it as me, because they're just like, oh, they look at the cover, they look at a blurb, and it seems like everybody is so entrenched that they kind of think they already know what the book is about. And I'm just like, no, we have to read it. So I'm really excited. And I'm a part of something called the Rural Prevention Network here in Washington State. And we have Monica speaking at one of our meetings next month, a very short one. But our job is drug and alcohol prevention. And a lot of it involves changing people's minds who aren't ready to change. And we talk about how to be culturally competent when people need services. And I don't know if it's a question or if it's a comment, but a lot of times us in the job feel like we get stuck in the middle because a lot of people have a lot of opinions about people, about why people use drugs, about using evidence-based practices, about how we should be treating kids in school, what should happen. And a lot of us who do these jobs in rural communities don't feel comfortable completely outing ourselves as being completely progressive. And so we have to serve our communities in a way that they're ready. So I just was hoping that you could speak to that.
Yeah, I spoke not long ago to a Health and Human Services conference in, was it Wisconsin? And it was Minnesota. And it was fascinating. And they said a lot of similar things that you were just saying, you know, feeling like they're caught in the middle, understanding that they have to serve a community, that they're there to provide services that help quality of life, but that they're witnessing these disagreements that can get so pernicious. I mean, there's a lot that I could say, but for what it's worth, what you said reminded me of something that I heard from someone in rural Eastern Washington, Sulani Madsen, who's a columnist for the Spokesman Review. And she tells a story about how she started volunteering for as like a volunteer EMT. And so, you know, she's kind of in that world. And she heard one of the phrases that people often threw around was frequent flyers. That there are some folks who need the services over and over again, and they're frequent flyers. And she started noticing that that phrase had embedded a judgment in her mind. You know, these are frequent flyers. It's a way of condescending. And so once she noticed that, she decided to do something about it. And what she did was a reframe. And so after working with so many of these folks, she decided, no, for me, FF means fragile families. That's what that means for me. And what she noticed was that allowed her to have the compassion and connection that she wanted with her neighbors, with folks who need help, right? And that she did not want to condescend, and she wouldn't play that game. So I'm not sure what about your question made that come to mind, but we really can, you know, labels and stereotypes, we can have some control over them. We really can. But again, it begins with noticing the assumptions we're making about other people.
Thank you. I do see a question that might need further explanation, but we'll see where we go. The question was, how do you communicate with a person who has NPD, narcissistic personality disorder?
I don't feel like I'm very qualified to answer that. I don't know enough about narcissistic personality disorder. All I can say generally is each of us sees the world through our own lens, and we construct the world in our own minds, how we interpret it. We each do that, you know? Like I look at a cat, you look at a cat. I'm really, really allergic to a cat. You love a cat. You love cats. Like that's different. We're looking at the same object very different ways. So depending on how someone's mind and heart constructs the world, right? It's understanding that is sort of the key to understanding a person. So whether they have a disorder or their brain just sees the world differently, it's kind of, there's something connected there, which is the more you can understand about how they construct and see and view their world, the better you can understand them.
Thank you for that. I know that sometimes we can't speak to every question, right? We don't know everything, and that's okay. And that was one of the things that you mentioned in your book, was just being like, straight up, I don't know. and that's all right.
Yeah.
I am going to allow some space for Colleen Long to ask their question, if you want to come off mute.
Hello, this is so wonderful. I'm so glad for your book. My husband and I are listening to it together, but I also have the book, so I'm reading along with it as you talk. But you are delightful to have how you're reading your book, and so that is wonderful. So we've gotten to siloing, so that's as far as we have gotten into it. But I can't remember, maybe I had said that I've been involved with Braver Angels. I haven't been active recently, but I was such a joy to find out. And I'm in Eastern Washington is where I am too. And so that was great. But what I've discovered is one of the things you spoke about because people can view you as probably red or blue, and in that you can have, like with blue, someone can start talking to you very negative, sarcastic about reds.
Yep.
And they think that you would just agree with this because of how they could view who you are. And so I had a conversation with a person on the street, had a 4th of July parade, and was speaking about basically kind of putting people as being human rather than evil. And he kind of stopped himself and he said, "Well, you aren't a Trump voter, are you?" I said, "No." And then so it threw him that he didn't know how to handle me not being vilifying.
Right.
And so I didn't catch this, or I didn't really even pay attention, but my husband mentioned later, he stopped and he said, "You've given me something to think about."
Wow.
So we didn't continue any further, but how, when you're in the silo that maybe you might feel kind of comfortable in, but you're met with that, how do you do some of those things that you're not just shutting them off and being rude? I mean, you can be the same way to them as you can be the people that are opposite of you.
Yeah, no, and I think some of the hardest ways to do this kind of work is actually with your own side. You know, so there's this woman, Megan Phelps Roper, who was part of the Westboro Baptist Church, if that name rings a bell to anyone.
Yes.
It's like a church that was named like a hate group and protested funerals and some really cruel, awful ways kind of thing. So, you know, she was a true believer and in the church. And back then, when she was in it, she discovered Twitter and she loved Twitter. And she realized that she started tweeting about the church's beliefs about how people, you know, certain people are really awful and kind of don't deserve to be here and God hates them and all of that. And she would get a ton of hate messages in return. And one would think, well, that would be a sign that, you know, she should reconsider her views. But it wasn't, because the way she saw it, you know, her job is to tell a world that is blind the truth. And so they're going to hate me. And I accept that because they're the other. And so I'm trying to send volleys to the other. And if they send hate back, that means it's working. That means they are seeing my message. Yay. So the shame people threw at her, she took as encouragement. That's what we're doing across divides to each other when we vilify and dehumanize each other. That's exactly the same thing. She ended up leaving the Westboro Baptist Church after some folks on Twitter, believe it or not, started really hearing her and caring for her in a certain way, and eventually getting to the point where they could show her some of the inherent contradictions in her belief system. And then she kind of emerged, but she speaks with sort of real, it gives me chills to hear her speak about how sure she was that she was right. And how scary it is to look back at something you believed and think, that was awful, but I really believed it. That could happen to me again. That could happen to anyone. Anyway, so shame, it never works. You know, the right throws shame at the left, expecting them to change. Why would they do that? The Megan then defined shame. She said, shame is that feeling you get when you have violated the norms of your community. But the key word in that is your community. If you violate the norms of the other community opposed to you, great. Great. Because they're my enemy. So it means I'm doing something right. So this is how we're actually making everything worse, right? By believing the worst of the people on the other side and then throwing them shame.
What was her name?
Megan Phelps Roper, Roeper.
Thank you, Monica. And thank you, Colleen, for your question.
You're welcome.
I'll allow some more space for any other Q&A questions before we pivot elsewhere. So I'll give some space. Oh, go ahead, Raven. I see you raising your hand.
Thanks. I was looking for the little hand and I couldn't find it. Anyways, mucho gusto, Mónica.
Gracias.
Yeah. Oh, it's just like my brain. Okay, books. Yes. I listen to Ezra Klein all the time, and his the end of his podcast, he always says, what are 3 books you recommend for our audience? So you gave us some books. And I'm curious about David McCrae. Do you have a title of one of his books?
Yes, it's here somewhere. Oh gosh. Okay, I'm probably not gonna find it in time. It's called How Minds Change, from last year, 2022. So David McRaney,
McCraney. Yeah.
How
McCraney.
Minds Change. I also really want to recommend this one, David Brooks, How to Know a Person, came out like 2 weeks ago. Fabulous. I just interviewed him for my podcast last week, and that episode comes out soon.
Oh, great. I'll listen.
I've got, frankly, this whole I could tell you about a lot of these books.
Okay.
But those come to mind.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank
Good
you.
question. Totally. Here's How Minds Change.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Raven. And I bet totally there's like hundreds of books, Monica, you could share with us on that. And that's so fun. I love that folks are like, give me books, give me things, give me knowledge.
I like it.
I noticed a question came in directly. How do we apply this? And I'm assuming this means the concept of having these curious bridging conversations through the holidays with family.
Yeah, that's a big topic. That's big. The cliche right now is that it happens over the Thanksgiving dinner table, that someone brings up a hard thing. And the truth is that's usually not a great place to do, think again about containment, right? If if you're sitting there and there's a lot of family, including people who don't see themselves that often, it's a terrible place to bring up a tough conversation. But it's really about away from the table. Away from the table, you're talking to Cousin Mary, and Cousin Mary disagrees with you on this one thing, and you've been wondering about Cousin Mary, and you've decided you're ready to talk to Cousin Mary, but maybe you've had a history of talking with Cousin Mary and it hasn't gone well. Okay, there's a path here for you. When you want to reset or begin with repair, a great way to begin that is to first understand that if you are not part of the problem, you can't be part of the solution. If you are not part of the problem, you can't be part of the solution. A lot of times we say, well, I can't talk to Cousin Mary because she's so judgmental. She's terrible. She always does this and this and this. And we don't reflect on what we do, because a dynamic has 2 people in it. Dynamic is multi-party, right? So be honest. What do you do with Cousin Mary, right? So I've done this where I've gone up to someone and I've said something like, hey, I know it's not gone great in the past, but I really am curious to learn more about your perspective on X. I'm glad we're here together and all of that. And I might say, and I want to tell you, I know that these haven't been productive in the past. And one reason is I think I interrupt you too much. And I'm sorry about that. And I've been working on interrupting less. And I'd like to really try that next time we talk. And so you never know, right? That could inspire Cousin Mary to be like, yeah, I guess I also do X, Y, and Z. It might not, but it really helps to come humble if you want to do that. The other thing is to remember that curiosity is contagious. So a lot of people come and tell me, I'm curious, but this other person just isn't. And I can't talk to them because when I talk to them, I do all the asking, they do all the talking, and I don't feel like it's reciprocated. And that can be really frustrating. It's not a great place. Like a really good conversation feels reciprocal and balanced and all of that. It gets really complicated with politics, though. It can be the case, for example, like let's lay out a possibility. The possibility that maybe, the liberal uncle in your family never, lives in a very conservative area with tons of conservative relatives. And so never feels heard by them. So finally a conservative from their family comes and asks them questions. This is his chance. He's going to talk at them all day long because there is such a debt of feeling heard, right? So sometimes things are skewed like that. And we think, oh my God, they're so selfish. They're not curious. They're incapable of curiosity, instead of thinking there's a debt. Look how unheard they feel, right? So it can take a while before something like that debt is paid for another person. Now, this is not everybody. This is not the only reason. Some people just, it's very hard for them to step outside their own perspective. That can happen. But I'm just saying, give them a chance. And we know from the research that if you use receptive language, if you use flexible language, you know, right now, as I think about it, here's what comes up for me on this issue. Instead of, this is always wrong, you know, if you use absolute language, so will they. And if you use hedging flexible language, so might they. And then your whole conversation becomes more curious. And then you can really explore perspectives together.
Thank you for answering that question. Any other questions that have bubbled up after hearing all the answers Monica has been giving us?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
When I haven't read the book, unfortunately, but just thinking about like generations, you know, thinking kind of about family and my grandparents and then my parents, and then I'm in my 30s, and just thinking about the generational differences that we all face. If you have any comments to say about that.
Woo! Yeah, the generational divide is a really important one. So I'm part of something called Generations Over Dinner. Cannot tell you how cool this project is. If anyone wants to look it up, it's a kit, and anyone can do it. Anyone can have a Generations Over Dinner and host it at their own home. And the goal of it is to have as many of the 7 living generations represented by the guests around the table. And then you get this kit of questions that you can ask. A couple of my favorites are for each person at the table, you know, as young as 9, which is the alpha generation, as old as 90 something, the silent generation, or the greatest generation, if you can find someone, or the silent generation. And the questions are, I am too young to X. I am too old to X, like fill in the blank. I am too young to, I am too old to. And man, we went around that table answering that question. Young and old, man, was it cool. So I say that because connecting across generations, I think, is such a source of wisdom that we don't tap enough in our society. It is really cool. And, you know, what happens is, as we know, younger generations grow up feeling that things that feel recent and new to older folks are just normal. You know, again, it's that fish in water thing. That's what happens, right? So for me, I'm a millennial. I'm 40 years old. And for me, the thing that the young generations, Gen Z and below, is about, you know, pronouns, gender diversity. This is new to me. Like when I was in school, I didn't hear about any they, thems, right? Like that was new to me. And now what I find is that talking with folks who are in Gen Z, making sure that I talk with folks who are in Gen Z about their experience in college and school on campus keeps me from doing the thing that, you know, schmarmy old people tend to do, which is kids these days. It doesn't make any sense. It's so terrible and it's so ridiculous, right? But I think that's more about, it's not a factor of your age or your generation. It's a factor of how much exposure and experience do you have with different generations. Hearing them and asking them about their own experience and trying to put yourself in their shoes. Because once you do that, you're like, oh, I can see it the way Gen Z sees it. And just because it's new to me and really different and unfamiliar doesn't mean it's a threat, right? It's just new and different. And that's the way the world changes. And I could give a, you know, similar story going the other way. I think that older generations carry just an alarming amount of wisdom that young people don't know how to tap. They just don't. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity in this.
Awesome. My unmute button was freaking out. Thank you for that. We can always come back to Q&A. I did want to touch a little bit on one of our pre-submitted questions that we got. Here's the question. I genuinely try not to discuss contagious issues like politics, religion, or even health and nutrition because it can harm my relationships. how can I open up to having difficult conversations and agree to disagree, that's put in quotes, without upsetting the relationship?
And that's the $1 million question. I mean, each of us is the best gauge. You know, all of these things are so sensitive and they're so personal and they're so relational. There's no script, there's no universal prescription. Your experience with another person is a giant source of information about how they tend to react to different ideas and how they react to you when you bring up things that make them uncomfortable. So it is a completely personal equation each and every time. You know, but that doesn't mean that there often are ways to find little cracks. One of them is to start really, really, really small. I think a lot of times when people hear about this kind of work, they imagine the hardest conversation they can have. And they think that this is about, oh my gosh, I got to go do that. And you don't. It can start extremely small. It can start with, you know, next time I talk to this person, okay, we don't talk about politics, right? But I walk in the room and they've just finished watching Rachel Maddow, right? And I'm conservative and they're liberal, whatever it is. And it's like, I would normally ignore that. But what if today I go, hey, so what's something, I'm curious, like what's something Rachel talked about that you found really compelling today? And then they answer, and maybe you're triggered a little. You're like, I don't like that. I disagree with that. Well, let that rest. Just go, oh, okay, thanks for sharing. That's it, right? Now, maybe next time there's another little political intersection somewhere, and you find another way to just engage. Small. And once again, you don't let it necessarily escalate. You just go, oh, thanks. That's interesting. Done. And then someday you'll know when the right moment is to be like, can we talk about that? Because I see that really differently. And I know that you know that about me, but I don't know, do you have a minute just to explore that for a second? So we don't tend to give these things the patience that they often could benefit from. You know, we want to jump into that conversation and now it's tense and now let's solve it. And it's like, you're not going to solve it. You're not going to do that. But the risk is, and maybe the questioner already intuits this, I have met many people from families that have decided not to talk about politics. Many people who basically tell me, you know, I remember one woman, Courtney, who said, when my dad told me that, you know, we were no longer to talk about politics, I felt like we could no longer talk about me because there's some issues I deeply care about. And now he's not going to see me because he doesn't want to see them. And so that's it. There's a whole side of me he's not going to see. And that hurts my relationship too.
Thank you for answering that and giving us the reality of if we don't talk about it, sometimes people don't feel seen. Yeah. I want to create some more space to see if anybody else had any questions that maybe bubbled to the surface. Okay. That is totally fine. We'll move on to another conversation. So we're talking a lot about having these conversations and the importance of having these conversations. So I thought up this question just as an example of like how you would go about a conversation. So let's say we're having a conversation, we have enough time, we're both in person, we're both showing up, we both have our ability to give each other the time and the space, and our body language is good, and we've started this conversation, and one of us brings up police funding. And I hold the belief in this conversation that the police should be defunded and we could use those funds for our community services. But you hold the view, you hold the view that of funding the police more because you are scared of rising violence in your community, and it's the government's role to provide law and order. What might you say to me to have a bridging conversation about this topic?
Oh, great question. There's so many on-ramps, and it depends on our relationship. It depends on the context of our interaction. It could be so many different things. But if I'm already aware of the disagreement and I sense that, okay, you know, we can maybe talk about this. I would try to fill in my gaps, right? So, okay, I'm someone who believes the police should be funded more. And maybe I'm just really not, what am I missing? Like, there's really something I'm not getting about, gosh, why would someone see it so differently? And I would begin with, I would ask those two questions, just one. So how did you, so Light, you know that you and I kind of disagree on this. And I'm really curious how you came to believe that the police ought to be defunded. Like, what's some of the personal experiences that have informed your view on it? And that sounds kind of scripted and kind of formal, but I might lighten that a little bit. Like, yeah, what do you think of when you think of this view and why it matters to you? And then see what comes up, right? And Light, you may have an experience for me, or you may have a certain value, like I just think it's so important that the people who take care of our neighbors are equipped to do it. And I'm not sure the police have that equipment. Oh, okay. And I can fill in my gaps. So instead of jumping in with my opinion, I would say, tell me more about that. So what, or I might offer like a contrast. I might say, well, my understanding is that police are trained in some of these ways of serving folks, but tell me about the concerns you have, because it sounds like it doesn't feel sufficient to you. And I get more information from you, right? And then at some point I could pick that moment to pivot, or you get curious about me and you go, but wait, well, tell me more about how you see it, right? But as soon as one of us becomes condescending or, stretches the bounds of sort of the pool of meaning we're trying to build together, things can get a little hairy, at which point it's not all over, I can say, oh my gosh, that came out wrong. Hang on. Or I didn't mean it that way. Or we can do something that's called splitting, which is a really handy thing, where you say, I'm not saying this, I'm saying this. I want to be clear with you that I'm not saying this, or I'm not dismissing what you're saying about so-and-so, or it may sound like I whatever, but I want to be clear. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this. So anytime you can sculpt and split, you're helping the other person understand you better. So these are some of the paths you could take.
Thank you for answering that question. I hope it gave some folks some ways that they can also build connections or in their bridging conversations. I see a question in the chat. Have you ever met someone who actually did change their mind on things in a big way through these bridging conversations?
Yeah, I wrote in the book about a couple of them. The one that comes to mind is a man named David Smith, who I wrote about quite a bit, because he also, the way in which his journey of changing his mind drew him to want to understand the process of how minds change. And he's really, really brilliant on these points. And he's here in Washington State. He's great. But he grew up with very strong religious beliefs of a certain kind, and in a community that really sort of felt, self-sufficient and said, this is it. This is what there is. These are the answers. He ended up going to like a theology kind of divinity school, and he realized, that he had felt sort of morally superior to folks who might have different beliefs, including no belief at all. And over time, things started to sort of work on him a little bit, and he started to change his mind, but it took 15 long years. And the real breaking moment for him was he was offered tenure at this religious institution, but in order to ethically accept it, he had to really pledge like the faith that he started out with. And he realized he no longer had that faith. So he had to be honest and say, I've changed my mind severely on this. He lost all his friends, a lot of his community, a lot of his sort of neighbor type relationships, and kind of had to start over. Changing your mind in a big way can be very scary and very isolating, which is one of the reasons we resist it. It feels like you lose yourself. Some thinkers have thought about that a part of you dies. When you change a deeply held belief, a part of you dies, has to be reborn. In the book, I balance that example with, I have a good friend who was non-religious for a big chunk of his life. And until he met the woman who would be his future wife, and in conversations with her about God and about Christianity in particular, he started to be like, oh, Christianity's not what I thought it was. And he kept kind of talking to her, and it took like 2 years, and he became Christian, and he's a very, very devout Christian. So it's not about, we all end up in one truthful place or whatever. It's like, it's such an interesting, complicated formula, right? I have never changed my mind in a big way on issues, but I've changed my mind a lot in small ways. And I've seen this happen to a lot of people. So I think sometimes we think that the only worthwhile output of a conversation across divides is when that person changes their mind in a big way. Otherwise, it's a waste of my time. Right. Or, yeah. And that's just when people do change their own minds, because that's the only way this happens, it's very rare for it to happen in the moment with you, right when they hear something surprising or something insightful. I think I never thought of it that way moments. Some of them plant themselves in our minds and grow over time. And so that's usually how it's happened to me. I realized 2 weeks later that something somebody told me 2 weeks ago has influenced me. But it's very difficult to witness that. And we keep wanting to, right? Which is why we just shake each other and go, come on, don't you see things my way? And it's like, no, it's not going to happen right now. Even if they do. But I think of, I go to the gym, like Orange Theory. And at Orange Theory, this gym, they talk about how if you do 12 minutes of really hard cardio, there's an afterburn effect. And your body keeps burning calories after you've left the gym. But you have to get to 12 minutes in the orange zone and all that crap. And it's sort of similar with conversation. The conversations we have with another person across a divide that add friction. We've been there. They're emotionally demanding and they challenge us up and down. You can feel your heart and your mind churn and whirl around and go, what's going on? What's going on? You know, and then you finish that conversation, but the conversation with yourself is the one that you really spun up. And that one goes on and on and on and on. And that one is the one that might just make you realize you've changed.
Thank you, Monica. We have enough time for one more question. So I'll see if anybody has any real quick. All right. So I'll give you a question, Monica.
Mhm.
Can you give some examples of how somebody could foster curiosity in their daily life?
Yeah. This is, as I've done more and more of this work, I've realized that it's much more internal. The first steps are internal. It's about fostering curiosity in yourself, right? So this is going to sound silly. It's not. Once a day, look at the room you're in with new eyes. Make yourself find as many questions as possible, right? So I'm in my office right now. And like, why did I choose to arrange my books this way? Why? That's a chalkboard wall. You can't see it. It's actually back here as a chalkboard wall. How do they make chalkboard paint? I don't know how that works. How do they even make that? Who discovered chalkboard paint? Like, when did that become a thing in a fashion, like a home improvement staple? I've got a plant over there, a pothos plant. Well, I want to know about the pothos plant. What makes the pothos plant so hardy that even though I kill all my other plants, that one still survives? I can just look around, right? Why did the builder of this home choose to install that disgusting carpet that I really want to change? Was it the cheap materials? Why? Do they just really like that color brown? Look around your room and see what questions you have. Give your curiosity muscle some exercise, some practice. Look for the gaps, and then like level up a little bit on that. Try to notice the assumptions that you make about other people. You make them all the time. When you're out in the street and you see someone walking by, boom, you've made a bunch of assumptions you just don't notice. Try to notice one. Try to notice one. Because of the way that person is, what that person is wearing, I'm assuming that they work in this field. Interesting. You don't have to go and like inquire or like put that person through an inquisition on their way to work. Just notice it. So that's really the very first step.
Awesome. Thank you, Monica, for providing some accessible ways that we can remain curious. Well, folks, we've come to the time. We're going to wrap up. I see some folks saying thank you and dropping some things in the chat. Monica, thank you so much for joining us today and carving up time and space with all of us in rural North Central Washington. It's been so fun and eye-opening to talk with you today. Thank you for sharing your experiences with our community. We so appreciate your time. Remember, Monica's book is available in print and digital formats through North Central Washington libraries. Check it out. Listen to it if you can. It's Monica's voice and it's amazing. Thank you again. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Remember to stay curious.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you
Bye,
so much
y'all.
for joining tonight.
Bye,
Thank you,
y'all.
Light. That was
Yeah,
fun.
of course.
Thank you. Night, everyone.
Good
Oh,
night.
Brian,
Bye.
your background's so cool.
Bye.